All I had to do, Olivia said, was show up, smile, and stay out of the frame. I should have known then. The email arrived just after 9, nestled between a vendor invoice and a reminder to approve next quarter's social budget. The subject line stood out. "You're invited," in that faux golden cursive reserved for overly ambitious wedding invitations or overpriced fundraisers. Claire clicked it reluctantly, already predicting the tone before the image loaded. She scrolled. Olive and blush floral borders, a serif font proclaiming Jacob and Olivia, and a list of names under special guests and speakers. Her name wasn't one of them. Claire blinked, scrolled again, slower this time, looking for an oversight. Then she spotted it. Table 14, marked as overflow in parentheses, next to a list of second cousins and a man she hadn't spoken to since college. Her phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Just sit wherever. We're tight on space. Can't wait to see you." Claire let out a quiet exhale, the kind reserved for the very stupid or the very familiar. She could already picture it. Olivia beaming in white chiffon, their parents smiling stiffly at the camera, Jacob soaking in praise like it was sunlight. Claire? Cropped out. Or worse, not even in the frame. Her inbox pinged again. A different thread this time. Subject: Miller and Company. Sponsor confirmed. She clicked it without thinking, then froze. The signature at the bottom read, "Approved. C. Morgan." Her name, her firm, her money behind whatever this wedding-turned-publicity gala had morphed into. She leaned back, the leather chair creaking slightly beneath her. Olivia had never said the event had corporate sponsorship. Never mentioned the PR rollouts, the local press tie-ins, or the fact that her fiancé's startup had rebranded just in time to host. But Claire recognized the hallmarks. Subtle product placement, branded floral walls, influencer-friendly lighting. All the tricks her firm had pioneered. She stared at the screen, trying to decide what bothered her more. That Olivia hadn't asked permission, or that she hadn't even pretended to. Her eyes drifted to the framed photo on her bookshelf. Olivia, 6 years ago on the verge of bankruptcy, calling Claire in tears. And Claire, always the fixer, wiring $15,000 without hesitation. No questions, no receipts, just, "You'll get through this." And silence. She reached for her phone again, thumb hovering before typing. She texts her assistant, Julia. "Did we approve anything for Miller and Company's wedding event?" The only other guests at my table were a great aunt with oxygen tubes and a toddler with an iPad on full volume. The Grand Pacific's beachfront ballroom shimmered with the kind of curated luxury that made weddings indistinguishable from product launches. White roses climbed gilded trellises. A jazz quartet murmured something vaguely Cole Porter. The Pacific glinted through floor-to-ceiling windows like a set piece hired just for the occasion. Claire adjusted the strap of her navy dress and gave her name to the usher, who didn't bother looking up. He motioned vaguely left, murmuring, "Table 14. She followed the line of gleaming chairs and silk centerpieces until she found it, wedged beside a swinging kitchen door. The hum of dish racks and barked commands drifted out each time it opened. A toddler smacked a touchscreen beside her. Across the table, Aunt June's oxygen hissed in rhythm with the music. Claire sat. No one looked up. The MC tapped the mic, launching into a syrupy introduction. Jacob stood beside Olivia, both glowing and photogenic. He gestured out to the room. "Tonight is about love, about building the future. I want to thank those who believed in us. Our partners, our allies, those who made this possible." Claire waited. Nothing. Her name didn't follow. At the next table, someone clinked their glass. A cousin leaned into another, whispered just loud enough, "Didn't she pay for part of this?" Claire's jaw twitched, but she didn't look over. She'd flown colleagues across the world for less extravagant setups. She'd orchestrated entire press launches with more grace. She once restructured VIP logistics for a global summit with 72 hours notice. But here, no place card, no acknowledgement, no Olivia. A waiter reached past her to deliver champagne to the next table. skipped hers entirely. She folded her hands in her lap, stared at her untouched water glass. The jazz drifted on. The toddler swiped again, volume still maxed. A second usher strolled past, scanning badges. His glance swept her and moved on without pause. Not even a nod. Her phone buzzed inside her clutch. She debated ignoring it, then finally slipped it out, half shielding the screen. Julia's name flashed. The Miller contract still isn't signed. Want me to freeze it? They built a stage on money I sent, and then acted like I wasn't invited to the show. The wine was warm. Not ideal, but Claire wasn't drinking for taste tonight. She sat barefoot at her desk, the silk dress exchanged for a hoodie and leggings, her hair twisted into a messy knot. The only light came from her laptop screen, casting hard lines across her face in the reflection. She pulled up the Miller & Company campaign folder. Tiered schedules, embargoed quotes, photo mock-ups. Claire remembered reviewing them weeks ago, circling vague positioning statements with notes like reputation risk and no defined differentiator. She remembered sending them back and being ignored. Below the main deck, Julia had labeled an internal subfolder, transition options, just in case. Claire opened a new email, typing slowly but without pause. Subject, temporary campaign hold team. Due to recent alignment concerns, we recommend a 48-hour pause on Miller-related assets. Please hold on all scheduled content across channels. We'll reassess early next week. She reread it twice. Neutral, unprovable, lethal. With one more sip of wine, she hit send. 2 minutes later, Julia's typing dots appeared in the chat. Confirmed. We'll reroute everything to archive. Do you want the folder labeled or kept buried? Claire hesitated, then replied, keep it subtle. Rename as Q2 alignment. Another ping. Got it. Uploading screenshots and contact logs now. Just in case. Claire smiled. Just barely. Julia always understood the subtext. She clicked through the folder one more time. Jacob's headshot looked particularly smug next to the tagline. Built on trust. Backed by people. She deleted nothing. She didn't have to. Pulling the plug didn't mean burning the wires. At 1:43 a.m., her phone rang. Claire frowned. No one called this late unless something was on fire or falling apart. She answered, voice level. Claire Morgan. A hesitant voice replied, hi, this is Maddie from PR Insider. We noticed Miller & Company was pulled from the Q2 Innovation Roundup. Just wondering if you'd like to comment? Claire closed her laptop softly, the screen dimming into black. No comment at this time. Things are shifting. If you humiliate someone in a room full of people, don't be surprised when the silence later is weaponized. Claire stirred her latte slowly, the tiny silver spoon clinking against ceramic like a ticking clock. The seaside cafe was unusually quiet for a Sunday. A few scattered couples brunched with sunglasses on, children tossed bread to gulls outside, and somewhere farther down the beach, a steel drum band droned faintly. The breeze off the ocean should have felt refreshing. Instead, it carried weight. Across from her, Olivia adjusted her sunglasses, not for sun, but for cover. Her perfectly styled waves hadn't moved since she walked in. Claire noticed. Of course she noticed. I just thought we should talk, Olivia said, using the tone she reserved for donor events and disappointed interns. Clear the air. Claire didn't answer right away. She let the silence stretch. A waiter passed, mistook the tension for an awkward date, and vanished without a word. Olivia glanced sideways. Look, I didn't mean for you to feel excluded. It wasn't personal, it's just... These things are complicated. Seating charts, guest lists. You know. Claire placed her spoon down gently. Right, it's hard to fit everyone. Olivia seized the opening. Exactly. I imagine it's even harder when one of them paid for the flowers, half the venue deposit, and brokered the PR deal that gave Jacob his last round of funding. Olivia blinked. Claire? I didn't want credit, Claire continued, but I assumed I wouldn't be seated behind the soup station next to a toddler watching cartoons. Olivia huffed a breath. Okay, that was a mistake. But you're taking this out of context. You know how family events get. Claire looked down, then back up. Yes, I do. A pause. Olivia picked up her mimosa and swirled it slowly, her facade beginning to strain. You've always kept track of things. Who did what, who paid for what. But family shouldn't keep score. Claire's expression didn't change, but her voice sharpened. Funny. You only say that when you're ahead. The words hung there, suspended like the silverware between their plates. A gull screeched outside. Somewhere, a chair scraped against tile. Claire remembered a line her therapist once said, back when Claire still felt the need to explain things. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're okay. She hadn't believed it then. But now? Now it felt like prophecy. Why are you doing this? Olivia asked finally. Is this about Jacob? Or Mom and Dad? Claire gave her a long look. This is about me. She pushed her empty cup slightly forward, the soft scrape almost surgical. Tell Jacob to check his inbox. I'm done keeping things quiet. She stood, gathered her bag, and walked out. Past the gulls, past the beach breeze, past the long shadow Olivia's world used to cast. The first sign was a panicked voicemail. The second was a LinkedIn post quietly removed by noon. Jacob didn't usually arrive at the office before 9 a.m., but this morning he was parked outside Miller & Company. HQ by 7:12, staring blankly at the tinted lobby windows like they might offer answers. His tie was crooked. His coffee was untouched. The night before had been celebratory. Champagne toasts, drone footage, hundreds of white roses wilting softly in the spring night air. Now the dream was cracking at the seams, and the cracks were loud. He stepped into the building just as his assistant Emily was wiping down the front desk. You have 5 voicemails, she said cautiously, and a lot of flagged emails. He didn't ask. He went straight to his office. Inside, 2 team leads were already waiting, hunched over their laptops like paramedics on the scene. One of them looked up. 2 outlets have pulled scheduled features, TechGrid and Visionary Founders. They cited uncertain partnerships and unresolved contract alignment. Jacob dropped his bag. What does that even mean? The woman turned her screen. They say they received a third-party notification suggesting the PR campaign's funding sources were unclear, and that there may be a conflict of interest. He blinked. From who? They didn't answer, just stared. A new email pinged in. Subject, immediate hold, Visionary Media Campaign. From Claire Morgan. Time, 7:44 a.m. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. The subject line said enough. A second ping came through, this time from Olivia. Where are you? Jacob, call Claire. Fix this. He did call, 3 times. Voicemail. Julia answered instead. Hi, Jacob, she said, not unkindly. Claire's not available right now. I need to speak with her. She's asked me to handle all Miller-related communications moving forward. That's not how this works. You can't just... I believe you'll find she can, Julia said, voice cool. And has. He could hear her typing. Social's heating up, she added. Miller's trending, for the wrong reasons. You're being dragged for ghost donors, ego funding, and female erasure. Jacob slammed his hand down on the desk. We never even mentioned Claire's involvement, because she asked us not to. Exactly, Julia replied. And now that silence is doing what it does best. He hung up. An hour later, the company's LinkedIn post announcing the wedding-turned-partnership showcase was gone. No explanation, no edits, just deleted. By noon, a Medium blog surfaced titled, The PR Queen You Forgot to Thank. It was unsigned. It didn't have to be. Everyone in the industry could guess. The real blow came at 2:37 p.m. An internal memo from an overzealous intern was accidentally CC'd to the press list. In it, a line stood out in bold. Note, Claire Morgan underwrote approximately 60% of event visibility costs. Ensure zero attribution unless otherwise directed. Within minutes, screenshots were flying. Olivia texted Claire only once that day. Was it worth it? Claire read it, then put her phone down, and didn't answer. It started with a blog post no one mentioned, but everyone read. Claire stared at the analytics window glowing on her screen, watching the real-time engagement spike. She didn't smile, not quite. But there was a certain stillness in her breath, like the hush that precedes a well-placed strike. Mid-May had wrapped San Diego in its softest breeze, but inside her firm's office, the air felt electric. Julia sat across from her, balancing a mug of coffee and the weight of what they'd just done. Earlier that morning, at precisely 9:03 a.m., Julia had posted the article from Claire's account. Anonymous, of course. But the voice within it was unmistakable. Claire's cadence, her irony, her precision, it echoed off every sentence like a quiet war drum. The title alone was surgical. Invisible Capital, When Quiet Women Build Public Empires. By 9:20, it had been shared by 3 mid-tier influencers. By 9:45, it slipped into the radar of industry insiders, strategists, branding leads, nonprofit directors. By 10:30, 2 niche PR newsletters cited it. By 11 o'clock, it appeared in a curated Twitter thread dissecting the erasure of female equity in tech-adjacent narratives. All without a single name. And yet, everyone knew. Claire hadn't needed to sign it. They'd know. Julia looked up from her own screen. We've passed 10,000 views. Shares are jumping. You're trending under 2 industry hashtags. Claire swirled the coffee in her ceramic mug, watching the dark liquid whirl into silence. Any comments from the usual suspects? 3 execs, 2 we've ghostwritten for. They're praising the insight of the piece. Julia smirked. Hypocrites, they've all ignored you in rooms you funded. Claire didn't blink. Let them clap, it won't save them. By mid-morning, Tech Table reposted it. Then came the whispers. One of Olivia's old college friends tagged the article with the caption, this hits close to home. Another retweeted with, weddings, startups, and silent investors. What a combo. Claire's phone stayed quiet. She liked it better that way. At 11:27, her screen flashed with Olivia's name. Claire stared at it for a full ring cycle, then picked up. Interesting timing for a feminist piece, Olivia said. The words were dipped in something sweet and slow, honey over a knife's edge. Claire leaned back in her chair, letting the silence stretch just enough. Timing's funny that way. Did you write it? Does it matter? It matters if you're trying to sabotage us. Claire let out a soft breath. No sabotage, just context. A pause. Claire could almost hear Olivia adjusting her tone, trying to shift from accusation to diplomacy. You know, it didn't even name names, Olivia said. It just felt pointed. Claire clicked to another tab. If the shoe fits. She didn't wait for the response. The line clicked off. Back on the dashboard, engagement doubled in the past 30 minutes. Julia pinged her from the next room, the message clean and clipped. You ready for the next wave? Claire didn't hesitate. Load it. When a campaign vanishes mid-rollout, people start asking who unplugged the wires. Claire didn't flinch as she stepped into the boardroom. The chrome door hissed closed behind her, sealing the space into a hush broken only by the soft hum of the AC. 12 seats, 10 filled. Her team had arrived on time. Some out of routine, most out of respect. Julia was already tapping on her tablet, face unreadable but ready. Claire didn't waste time. We're suspending all deliverables for Miller & Company, she said. Effective immediately. A beat. One of the media coordinators, Erin, blinked. All of them? Claire nodded once. All. Clarifications? Someone asked. None, Julia answered before Claire could. No comms, no follow-ups. If someone reaches out, you're awaiting internal alignment. That's the line. Another beat. Silence fell again, thicker this time. Claire walked to the end of the room and tapped the wall display. With a flick of her hand, Miller's campaign metrics pulled up. A stream of green lines, spikes, ad impressions, and dollar signs. It had taken 6 months to build. She let them look at it for 3 seconds before she erased it from the screen. Jacob Miller, Claire said slowly, assumed the infrastructure would hold, even if the foundation cracked. He assumed wrong. Julia was already working through the checklist. Paid media, paused. Podcast integrations, canceled. Email sponsorships, will redirect. Influencer schedule, frozen. Claire glanced toward the team. Quiet is not neutral. In our business, it's a scalpel. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. By the time the meeting ended, Miller's digital presence was fraying like a severed cable. Ads stopped mid-roll. Event RSVPs dead-linked. Social media automation silently deactivated. Claire's firm had always worked like an invisible machine. Smooth, fast, quiet. Today, that same machine was being used in reverse. At 1:14 p.m., a freelance journalist tweeted, "Hearing chatter that Miller's Q2 push was shelved? Can anyone confirm?" No one answered, but within 10 minutes, the tweet racked up 800 likes and a flurry of quote tweets from startup whisperers and branding consultants. Claire sat back in her office, watching Julia reroute the firm's resources toward another client. Haventech's campaign had been due next month. It would now take over the Miller slot. "Prep a new calendar," Claire murmured. "Put Haventech in the fast lane." "Yes, ma'am." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number? She muted it. At 1:42 p.m., an email from Miller's director of operations popped up in her inbox. Subject line, "Urgent, campaign freeze?" She didn't open it. By 2 o'clock, multiple industry newsletters had pulled Miller from their upcoming features. Claire watched it unfold like weather. Inevitable, drifting. At 2:18 p.m., a newsletter she'd once ghostwritten for herself posted, "Insider source says a top-tier PR firm is pulling back from a high-profile tech campaign over ethical misalignment." She smiled faintly. At 3 o'clock, Jacob called her cell. 3 times. Then once more, this time from a blocked ID. "Persistent," Julia noted. "Unoriginal," Claire replied. Then came the real alert. 3:27 p.m. A system-generated notification arrived. Service paused. Client, Miller and Company. Claire had requested the template be formal, passive, and bloodless. The kind of email that says everything by refusing to explain itself. CC'd at the bottom, Jacob Miller, subject line clear. No signatures, just process. At 3:52 p.m., the intercom lit up. Claire's receptionist, soft-voiced but firm, said, "Jacob Miller's downstairs. He wants to see you." Claire looked out the window. The sun was brutal today, burning through the skyline like judgment. Below, cars moved in streams. People made decisions they couldn't take back. "He says it's urgent." Claire didn't answer immediately. She turned from the glass, walked back to her desk, and opened her messages. Olivia's text glared up at her. "Are you really doing this?" "What happened to family?" Claire deleted it without a second thought. She pressed the intercom button. "Tell him I'm not available." Reception paused. "Should I take a message?" "No," Claire said. "He'll get the one I already sent. When you poke a cornered beast, expect it to bite somewhere soft." The Midtown Concord Hotel was an old money kind of place. Dark wood paneling, subtle floral wallpaper, and crystal chandeliers that hummed softly with the weight of executive whispers. It was designed for people who had nothing left to prove and everything to lose. Claire knew the type well. She arrived just before the start time, choosing a seat 2 chairs from the head, where Jacob had already stationed himself. His arms stretched lazily along the back of his seat, a controlled show of ease. He wore a slate suit, the kind stylists picked out, not entrepreneurs. His smile was too perfect, practiced. Around the table sat 12 industry figures, PR firm heads, angel investors, platform execs, all gathered for the Sustainability and Tech Partnerships Roundtable. The name was neutral, but everyone knew. Today was about optics. "Glad you could join us," Jacob said, voice tinged with faux warmth as Claire settled into her chair. "Wouldn't be a real media conversation without you." She gave him a closed-lip smile, then turned to Julia's email briefing on her phone. The subject line read, "Confirmed attendees. Likely Jacob will pitch stability narrative. Prepared rebuttals attached." Julia was thorough. Claire appreciated that. The moderator began with formalities. Light small talk. Questions floated across the table. ROI metrics, values-based branding, alignment in crisis. But by the second round of commentary, Jacob began steering. "You know," he said, swirling his water, "one of the hardest things in partnerships is dealing with volatility. You can do everything right, but one emotional decision and poof, months of work derailed." A few heads nodded. Claire didn't blink. "Especially when personal vendettas get mixed in," Jacob continued. "That's why we run projections. Gut instinct? Not always reliable." Claire held his gaze. "That depends on whose gut you're measuring," she said evenly. Laughter flickered, nervous and shallow. Jacob smiled wider. "She always brings the numbers," he quipped. "Indeed," Claire replied. She pulled a slim folder from her leather tote and slid it onto the table. "Speaking of which, this is a 3-quarter analysis of Miller and Company's engagement metrics. You'll see the decline began weeks before our firm withdrew." She paused as hands reached for the documents. "And," she added, "those were metrics we warned about in December. Ignored, but documented." The table went still. The moderator cleared his throat. A woman from an international media firm flipped to the final page. "Says here Claire's firm funded the keynote rollout and the full influencer tier?" Jacob's face twitched. "Among others, yes," he said. "But Claire's firm built the network backend," said a younger man from a marketing agency. "Without that framework, none of the talent deals would have stuck." "And the Q1 dip predates the exit," the woman added. "That aligns with our dashboard, too." Jacob's composure slipped for just a second. Enough. Claire didn't gloat. She never needed to. When the moderator pivoted away from the exchange, Claire let the discussion wash over her. Quiet now, inert. She'd made her point. Not loud, just unignorable. After the meeting, small clusters formed in the hallway. Claire stepped aside, declining coffee offers and last-minute pitches. Outside, the air was warm and unfiltered, the kind of heat that made suits a punishment. Her phone buzzed. Julia. The text was short. Someone just leaked a voice note from the Miller Slack archive. Claire stared at the screen. A smile touched her lips, brief and razor-edged. She typed 2 words. "Play it. When you poke a cornered beast, expect it to bite somewhere soft." The room was too cold, or maybe it was just Claire's nerves sharpening into steel. The hotel's crystal chandeliers sparkled with polite opulence as industry executives gathered for the quarterly Media Innovation Roundtable. This wasn't Claire's battlefield of choice, but she had dressed for it in slate gray, the kind of color that didn't beg for attention but refused to be ignored. Jacob arrived late. His suit was a shade too shiny, his smile a little too forced. Claire didn't flinch. She already knew what was coming. "You know," Jacob said smoothly during the open discussion segment, "reliability in partnerships has to go beyond technical performance. Emotional alignment matters too." A few people glanced around. Claire kept her gaze fixed on the conference folder in front of her. She didn't blink. She didn't need to. Later, during breakout discussions, Jacob leaned against the corner of a coffee cart and continued, half in jest. "Claire's firm is impressive, but sometimes personal stakes blur professional judgment. It's unfortunate." Claire stepped forward calmly. She opened her tablet and projected a chart onto the room's shared display. Quarterly performance stats, black and white. Miller and Company's ROI began declining 3 weeks before our campaign suspension. she said. Attribution misfires. Inflated engagement. We flagged it. Jacob's fingers curled around his coffee cup. A senior executive, a woman in a deep navy dress, raised an eyebrow. Didn't Claire's firm fund half your rollout? The room stilled. Jacob's smile faltered, then reappeared, thinner. We had multiple contributors. Claire shut down the projection. And still, no one thought to say thank you. She didn't wait for a reply. She walked out before the applause, or the silence. Outside the hotel, the air was heavy with sun. Claire checked her phone. Julia. Someone just leaked a voice note from the Miller Slack archive. She stopped walking. Play it. It was grainy, but clear enough. A Miller staffer complaining about Claire's ego and how Olivia had called her high maintenance for asking to be acknowledged. Julia followed up. Want us to let it float? Claire looked out over the intersection, cars crawling past with indifferent ease. Let it breathe for a few hours. Then we respond, not directly, but with grace. She sat in her car and stared at the steering wheel. The beast was stirring, but she had no intention of letting it bite her first. Back at her firm, Claire called an impromptu meeting. Not long, just enough to set tone. From this point forward, she said, we don't defend. We elevate. If they want to weaponize visibility, we show them what precision looks like. No dramatics, just coordination, controlled presence, calculated release. Later that evening, a long-standing media contact texted, dinner sometime this week? Off the record. Claire smiled faintly. Doors were shifting again. At home, she opened a folder marked Internal Strategy Contingency. Inside was everything she never intended to use. Until now. Julia's final message came just before midnight. Tomorrow's headline will quote your article and tag Olivia. Claire typed back. They built a house on my silence. Time to test the foundation. They wanted me quiet, and now they wanted me responsible for the silence I gave them. Claire sat in her kitchen, black coffee going cold beside her as her phone vibrated in a steady, calculated rhythm. Mentions, alerts, whispers. The internet wasn't screaming, yet, but it was humming, a tone just off-key enough to be dangerous. The podcast episode dropped at midnight. Anonymous, supposedly independent, but the narrative was clear. Claire Morgan, PR powerhouse, had sabotaged a client out of personal spite. The host's voice dripped with faux neutrality. Some sources suggest the pullback wasn't strategic but emotional. A family spat gone nuclear. We don't name names, but when someone ghostwrites the script and then yanks it away? Claire didn't need names. She heard Olivia's fingerprints in every sentence. The calculated vagueness. The passive framing. The suggestion, not the accusation. It was her sister's style, always pushing the edge without ever owning the blade. Julia called. Do you want us to respond? No, Claire said. Not directly. She opened her laptop, navigated to her private archive. Old receipts, wire transfers, project memos where her name was scrubbed from slide decks, replaced with anonymous donor or left blank altogether. She clicked and dragged a single folder. Phase 1, Olivia comms. Julia's voice dropped to a whisper. You're ready. Just enough to clarify. Nothing hostile. Yet. Meanwhile, Olivia had gone on record. In a Q&A with a fashion blog, buried between lip gloss suggestions and wellness routines, she said, Claire wasn't excluded. It's a misunderstanding. I love my sister. I never thought she'd take it that way. Claire read the quote 3 times. Misunderstood. As if the absence of her name, her seat by the kitchen, the unacknowledged funding had all been an accident. As if she had stumbled into erasure and then been too sensitive to shrug it off. By noon, Julia had forwarded an internal timeline to a niche blogger they both trusted, someone who prided herself on pulling receipts with grace. Hours later, the piece went live. One woman bankrolled a $1 million launch, was erased, then blamed. It included screenshots, anonymized payment slips, Even an excerpt from an internal email praising Claire's team for their quiet generosity. The headline wasn't loud, but it hit like thunder inside an echo chamber already tuned to scandal. The shift was immediate. Comments poured in. Wait, Claire funded what? This is giving textbook gaslighting. She's been too quiet for too long. Respect, an industry roundup newsletter, embedded the article without comment, but placed it at the top of the section. Another podcast host tweeted, "Funny how the sabotage story skipped the funding part." Claire didn't gloat. She let the data do its job. By early evening, her phone buzzed again. Olivia. She hesitated, then answered. There was no preamble. Olivia's voice was raw, strained. "This is getting out of hand. They're twisting everything." Claire's tone was even. "Wasn't that the plan?" A pause, then a sob, small and sharp. "I didn't think it would go like this." Claire didn't reply. She looked out her window at the skyline flickering against the dusk. Eventually, Olivia spoke again. "You're not really going to go through with this, are you?" Claire said quietly, "I haven't done anything. Yet." And then she hung up. She stared at the darkening city, letting the weight settle. Not revenge, not rage, just balance. She opened a new folder. Phase 2. The game had shifted. Now it was hers to name. Claire leaned back in her chair, watching the analytics spike on her screen. The article had hit nerve endings in the public, especially among professional women who had seen their own names quietly omitted from projects they built. She scrolled through dozens of reposts. Venture capitalists, brand consultants, even a few minor celebrities quoting the line, "Invisible capital is still capital." It was subtle, anonymous, and razor-sharp. At Miller & Company, things were unraveling. Julia forwarded her a screenshot from an anonymous staffer's post on Blind. CEO blamed the wrong sister. Now we're bleeding clients. Someone else commented, "Heads are gonna roll." And not Claire's. Jacob hadn't released a statement. That, Claire noted, was smart. For now. But even silence had a shelf life, and his was nearing expiration. That evening, Julia called again. Her voice was taut but excited. "I got pinged by someone at Harper & Moss. They want to run a profile piece, not on the scandal, on you." Claire's breath caught. "Hard pass." Julia laughed gently. "They said you'd say that, but they're publishing either way. Might as well control the angle." Claire didn't respond right away. She sipped her tea, cold by now, and stared at the blinking cursor on her screen. A draft headline floated in her mind. "The architect you never saw." Not yet, she thought, but maybe soon. After the call, Claire opened her journal. She flipped back to a page from over a year ago, the one Julia had quoted. "They only remember your value once you withdraw it." She drew a box around the sentence, then wrote beneath it, "But now they remember the loss more than the gift." Across the city, Olivia was posting filtered brunch stories, trying to appear unfazed. But the comment sections were no longer friendly. One read, "You erased your sister and thought no one would notice?" Claire didn't like the hate, but she understood the force behind it. People weren't angry at Olivia alone. They were angry at the pattern she represented. And now, they had a name to rally behind. Her phone buzzed again. Julia's final text of the night. "Phase 2 is ready whenever you are." Claire turned off the screen, dimmed the lights, and sat still for a moment longer. Tomorrow she would speak louder. But tonight, silence still held the high ground. Meanwhile, at Miller & Company, Jacob slammed a conference room door, startling the few remaining executives who hadn't taken sudden mental health days. Olivia stood at the edge of the table, arms crossed, face pale beneath expertly applied makeup. "This wasn't supposed to blow up," Jacob hissed. Olivia's voice cracked. "You told me she wouldn't fight back." "I said she was strategic. You said she was harmless." Silence. One of the junior partners cleared his throat. "We're losing 3 sponsors. They're reevaluating visibility alignment. Whatever that means." Jacob turned to Olivia. Fix it. How? She whispered. No one answered. Back in her office, Claire drafted a single email. No press, no push. Just a line to a trusted contact in publishing. If the story needs to be told, I prefer it be written right. She didn't send it. Not yet. But she left it in drafts. A loaded chamber, a polite warning. The message was clear. She could end the story or escalate it, and they'd given her every reason to do both. I didn't need a courtroom. I had archives. Julia leaned in, a small speaker between them emitting Jacob's unmistakable voice, recorded weeks earlier. She won't dare walk. She's too addicted to being needed. Claire didn't blink. She tapped the spacebar, pausing the playback. Monica, their legal counsel, sat across the screen on a secure video call. That, she said matter-of-factly, is coercive. If this leaks, they're done. Claire exhaled slowly. We're not leaking it yet. She turned to Julia. Pull up the financials. In moments, her screen displayed spreadsheets, clean, time-stamped transfers, covering over 60% of Miller & Co.'s media spend. Claire had routed the funds through her firm's secondary portfolio. Invisible capital, now visible. I want this on file, she said. Every receipt, every draft, every approval they ignored. Julia opened the secure drive and labeled a new folder. Withdrawal assets. Claire began typing a short letter. One paragraph. Sharp. I am withdrawing all name and content rights, effective immediately. She reread it. No emotion, just leverage. Monica watched carefully. Once you send that, their campaign's lifeline dies. Claire nodded and hit send. An automated response from Miller & Company's content management system pinged seconds later. Portfolio access revoked. License invalid. Claire leaned back, her jaw tight. They built their brand on silence. Now it's theirs. Jacob paced the conference room floor like a lion in a collapsing zoo. Olivia sat in a corner, pale and still, her phone vibrating with press queries she didn't dare answer. They can't just take it all down, Jacob muttered, voice tight. Olivia's tone was brittle. It wasn't yours to begin with. He turned on her. You told me she wouldn't fight back, that she needed to stay invisible. And you believed that? She snapped. You think people like Claire disappear? They don't. They go quiet. Until they've got a plan. An intern poked his head in. PR Week just dropped a headline. Claire Morgan rescinds rights, Miller & Company in freefall. Jacob slammed the door shut again. At her own office, Claire was serene. Julia projected side-by-side analytics on a massive screen in the meeting room. Engagement stats before and after Claire's withdrawal. The numbers told the story plainly. Without her, Miller & Company wasn't just quieter. It was irrelevant. A senior client rep from a luxury skincare brand emailed next. Saw the news. We'd love to discuss your availability for Q3. We need clean leadership, not noise. Claire typed one word in response. Available. Monica pinged her again. They'll try to discredit you. It's likely Jacob will call you emotional, vengeful. I'm not either, Claire said. I'm precise. Later that afternoon, Claire sat for a professional photo shoot for the upcoming Keynote Summit. Clean light, steel gray blazer, no smile, just poise. The photographer asked, should we try something softer? Claire tilted her head. Number, let's keep it exact. By the evening, the revised speaker schedule for the Global Media Summit circulated across social feeds. Claire's name was listed first. Underneath, Claire Morgan, founder, architect of strategic silence. It trended within minutes. Julia watched the numbers spike. We're not just rewriting the story, we're replacing the narrator. Claire leaned back in her chair. And I'm finally signing my own name to the work. She opened her digital calendar and added a note under the keynote date. Speak loud. Speak last. The next morning, Claire's inbox overflowed. Invitations, apologies. Revisions of past statements from influencers who once posted only Miller's name, now tagging her directly. An old podcast episode quietly edited its show notes to include special thanks to Claire Morgan for foundational contributions. Claire read none of them fully. She didn't need reconciliation. She needed acknowledgement, and she had it. Julia knocked lightly on her door, holding 2 coffees. Victory tastes better with caffeine. Claire smirked. That or poetic timing. They sat in silence for a beat, then Julia asked, "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it? All those years letting them take the spotlight?" Claire stared out the window, the city skyline soft behind a haze of morning fog. It wasn't about the spotlight. It was about the scaffolding. I built it. I held it steady. Now I've taken my hands off. Julia nodded slowly. And it's collapsing. Claire turned to her, voice level. Exactly. And from now on, if I build anything, it'll have my name on the first beam. Her phone buzzed again, this time from a journalist she respected. Not a gossip columnist, but a policy writer who covered leadership dynamics and silent labor. The message was short. Would love your insight on invisible equity. Off the record if needed. Claire paused, then replied, "Happy to speak. On the record. Time they heard it straight." She opened her laptop and began sketching ideas for her keynote. No theatrics, just clarity, just truth. And a single slide as her opener. Silence is not absence. It's strategy. As the day ended, Claire returned to her calendar and made one final entry beneath the keynote. Legacy begins here. You can't erase someone who keeps the receipts. The house lights dimmed as the host welcomed the next panel. Partnerships that power the future. And Jacob Miller strode on stage, gripping the mic like it owed him something. His blazer was sharp, his smile rehearsed, but his eyes scanned the crowd with flickers of tension. He began with a practiced cadence. What makes a lasting collaboration is trust, mutual respect, shared vision. Words spilled like honeyed syrup, sweet and non-specific. Behind him, a screen displayed the Miller & Company logo, flanked by grinning stock photos of diverse teams. Backstage, Claire waited. Not in the green room she'd been offered earlier, but behind the side curtain, watching in silence. Julia stood beside her, earpiece in, iPad in hand. He's rambling, Julia murmured. They feel it too. Claire nodded once. Her cue was near. Jacob continued. This campaign, our campaign, is a testament to what can be built when egos are set aside and the mission comes first. The moderator, a respected industry figure, approached the mic to guide the next segment. Before we continue, I'm told we have a special guest who's requested a moment to respond. He looked toward the wings. Claire Morgan? The ballroom stirred. A few heads turned. Claire stepped forward, measured, composed. No theatrics, just precision. Her heels clicked once, twice on the wooden stage floor before she took the mic offered by the moderator. Thank you, she said simply. Jacob blinked, his jaw tensed. Claire turned to the audience. I wasn't scheduled to speak today, but I've been spoken about at length, so allow me a minute. Behind her, the screen flickered. Julia had remote access. A clean black slide appeared. Invisible capital, followed by the subtitle, What Happens When Credit is Erased. Many of you know the story, Claire said, or think you do. Let me offer context. She clicked the remote. Up came line items, financial transfers, subcontractor agreements, emails showing Claire's approval stamps on every major media partnership Miller & Company had boasted. Another slide, screenshots of public launch pages where her name was missing, deleted footnotes, redlined drafts. She turned slightly toward Jacob. We're often told to be team players, but there's a difference between collaboration and erasure. Gasps rippled. Phones went up. Livestream comments exploded. Jacob stepped forward. Claire, this isn't... She raised a hand. I'll be brief. She played a 10-second voice clip. Jacob's voice crackled through the ballroom speakers. "She's just a name behind the curtain. No one's here for her." Silence followed. Claire let it breathe. Then she spoke. "I built the curtain, and I'm taking it with me." The audience was still. Even the air felt suspended. Claire stepped back, allowing the weight of her final line to settle. Behind her, the screen transitioned again, this time to a simple quote. "Recognition isn't a favor. It's the cost of use." A panelist near the edge of the dais shifted in their seat. One of the industry leaders leaned toward their assistant, whispering with urgency. Jacob's mask cracked. He tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Tight, high, defensive. "She's making this personal," he said. "This was supposed to be a celebration." Claire looked at him calmly. "Personal? You're right, because theft of labor, especially when it's strategic and sustained, is always personal." Another slide clicked forward. A snippet of the campaign's success metrics, side by side with timestamps of Claire's contributions. The connection was undeniable. From backstage, Julia watched the feed light up. Claire Morgan trended on Twitter within minutes. On LinkedIn, influencers and professionals shared clips, labeling the speech everything from masterclass in dignity to corporate reckoning. The moderator cleared his throat. "Ms. Morgan, is there anything else you'd like to say?" Claire looked out over the audience. Rows of executives, interns, press, and people who had once overlooked her. "Yes," she said. "Women, especially those who build in silence, are not ornamental. We are structural." Another ripple of quiet awe. No one moved. Claire returned the mic to the moderator and walked off stage, eyes forward, spine unbending. Backstage, Julia met her with a bottled water and a quiet nod. "You set the building on fire and walked through it in white." Claire smiled faintly. "And no smoke on me." Moments later, Jacob tried to recover, but the tide had turned. Every word out of his mouth felt retroactive, defensive, insufficient. PR blogs published headlines within the hour. She built it. They buried her. She dug herself out. Live. Claire sat in the green room afterward, no longer needing to hide. Her phone buzzed with messages from past colleagues, clients, even competitors. Monica texted, "We just received 4 keynote requests, one from Harvard." Claire turned to Julia. "Tell them I'll speak, but only if I open. No panels, no sharing." Julia grinned. Noted. As the day wound down, Claire finally stepped outside into the fading San Francisco light. She looked up, not to the stage she'd left, but to the future she was now fully scripting herself. She had been behind the curtain long enough. Now, the spotlight belonged to her. Power doesn't vanish. It transfers. Claire once told Julia, "Let them build it. I'll wait until they forget I own the foundation." Now, it was time to reclaim that foundation. She didn't watch the interviews. She didn't scroll the tags. She didn't need to. The silence she had cultivated for so long had finally shifted into noise, and not the kind you could ignore. 2 days after the town hall, the industry was still reeling. Jacob's keynote invitations dried up overnight. Olivia was quietly removed from 2 upcoming speaker panels. One magazine postponed its power couple feature without explanation. Another published a piece titled, "When the Strategist Strikes Back." Claire sat in her apartment with a cup of tea, her cat curled nearby, watching her inbox swell. Offers, questions, apologies disguised as opportunities. She answered none. Julia texted her mid-morning, "Olivia just lost her podcast sponsor. They cited alignment concerns." Claire typed back, "We didn't even lift a finger." But they had, weeks ago, quietly, systematically. That's how real collapse worked. Not with one dramatic push, but a slow pulling of pins. By noon, Julia updated the Morgan firm's About page. She paused before publishing, then made a small but seismic change. founded by Claire Morgan, and team became founded by Claire Morgan. Claire didn't smile. She didn't need to. At Julia's office across town, the mood was different, more kinetic. Julia stood with 2 assistants, reviewing analytics in real time. Engagement's up 400% on all Claire content, one assistant said. People are resharing the keynote with captions like, "Finally, someone said it." Julia didn't flinch. She clicked into the firm's About page once more, double-checked the change, and hit refresh. A ping came through. It was Olivia. Not to Julia, directly to Claire. "I never thought you'd burn it all down." Claire, standing by her window now, sipping tea, read the message and didn't respond immediately. She looked out at the skyline, peaceful and intact. Then she typed, "I didn't. I just stopped holding it up." No fireworks, no legal threats, just the quiet removal of her effort. And the silence was deafening. Hours later, a major business magazine published its cover for the next issue, The Silent Strategist, How Claire Morgan Rewrote the Power Playbook. Claire stared at the image for a moment. Her own photo, unfiltered, unposed, strong. She saved it without comment. Somewhere across the city, Jacob and Olivia scrambled to stop the bleeding. But this wasn't a PR leak. It was a foundational crack. And Claire had walked away before it caved. That night, she opened a clean document. No logos, no slogans, just a blinking cursor and white space. She titled the file, "Legacy, Built Quiet." And she began to write. Her words, her way, finally unghosted. The next morning, Claire awoke earlier than usual, her phone already vibrating with new alerts. She didn't check them. Instead, she poured water into the kettle, fed the cat, and took a moment on the balcony as the city woke around her. Her life had shrunk and expanded all at once. Fewer meetings, fewer apologies, more clarity. Julia called around 9. The legal team at Miller & Company reached out. Nothing threatening, just seeking a pathway for closure. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Closure?" she repeated, as if tasting the word. "Let them seek." Also, Julia continued, someone anonymously uploaded the original funding agreement to a shared drive, with Olivia's signature on the clauses she tried to dispute. It's circulating. Claire didn't smile. She simply said, "Then the silence is doing its job." By midday, Olivia's name was trending. For all the wrong reasons. A respected commentator on social equity tweeted, "It's always the quietest person in the room doing the heaviest lifting. And when they leave, the whole structure shivers." The likes climbed into the hundreds of thousands. An invitation landed in Claire's inbox. This time, not for someone else's panel or someone else's wedding, but a keynote, solo, spotlighted. Topic: Invisible labor in the age of performance. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she forwarded it to Julia with a simple note. Only if it includes Q&A. This time she wanted to be heard, and to speak back. That evening, she finally allowed herself a small indulgence. Dinner out, alone by the bay. No disguise, no quiet corner. Just herself, lit by warm patio lights, surrounded by the low murmur of city life. A couple at the next table whispered after recognizing her, but she didn't shrink. She lifted her glass, toasted silently to nothing in particular, and took a long sip. This was her collapse, not theirs. The collapse of silence, of erasure, of being edited out of her own story. And in its place, something whole, something hers. She returned home just after 10, tipsy on freedom more than wine, and opened the file she had started the day before. The one titled, Legacy, Built Quiet. She didn't write about Jacob, or Olivia, not by name. She wrote about the systems, the patterns, the way contributions by women, especially those who didn't self-promote, were so easily categorized as support, assistance, or worse, expected. She wrote with surgical calm. The words poured from a place she hadn't tapped in years, not since her early 20s, before the world taught her that loud men got credit and quiet women got deadlines. Now, finally, the timeline was hers. She closed the document near midnight, saved a draft, and sent a version to Julia. Thoughts? Within 10 minutes, Julia replied, "It's the best thing you've ever written. They won't know what hit them." Claire smiled, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes. Not because she was tired, but because for once she wasn't holding anything up. Let everything else fall where it may. She had stopped being silent, and the echo would carry for miles. The following day, she received a courier package. No return address, just her name printed in clean serif type. Inside, a glossy printout of the Global Media Summit brochure. Her name was listed on the front page, keynote slot, centerfold. Below it, a phrase she hadn't approved but didn't mind reading. Architect of quiet power. For a moment, she ran her fingers over the embossing. Not out of vanity, but verification. It was real, tangible, unmistakable. That afternoon, Olivia's number flashed across her screen again. Claire didn't answer. This time, she deleted the voicemail without listening. Some bridges didn't need burning. They just needed abandonment. Later, as evening cooled the sky, Claire walked along the Marina alone. The wind pulled at her coat, salt mist in the air. A small girl riding a scooter looked up and pointed, "Mom, that's the lady from the video." Claire gave a half smile and kept walking. Not because she wanted to be mysterious, but because she no longer owed anyone explanation. They had made her invisible. And now, she was unforgettable. Closure isn't a conversation. Sometimes it's a signature. Claire sat in a room designed for endings. The law office smelled faintly of wood polish and confidence. Leather-bound folders rested in a precise fan across the mahogany table. No screens, no distractions, just paper, pen, and purpose. Across from her, Monica, the legal counsel she trusted most, flipped through the final packet. "You sure you don't want a release statement?" she asked. Claire didn't look up. No fanfare, no version control issues, just clean exits. Julia sat quietly in the corner, tablet in hand, not typing, just watching. The documents were standard but final: termination of contractual agreement, dissolution of non-equity partnership, transfer of unused assets, full severance with zero obligations on either end. There was even a paragraph waiving future claims, a paragraph Claire had insisted on including, though it hadn't been suggested. "This is generous," Monica said softly. They could have been sued for credit omission alone. Claire signed. One stroke, then another. Her signature had always been a study in restraint. Legible, no loops. "It's not generosity," she replied. "It's distance." The last document was folded, sealed, and slipped into an envelope with Olivia's name written in Claire's own hand. A closing gesture. A statement without quotation marks. As Monica stepped out to hand it to a courier, Claire opened her contacts list on her phone. She didn't hesitate. One name after another, Jacob, Olivia, mutual friends turned echoes. She deleted 14 entries. No message, no ceremony, just space. Julia finally spoke. "Feels like a breakup." "It's an erasure," Claire corrected, "but mutual." Outside, the late June sun cast long, forgiving shadows. Claire stood and adjusted the cuffs of her tailored navy blouse. She looked more rested now. Lighter, in a way that had nothing to do with time off and everything to do with reclaimed time. The letter to Olivia would arrive tomorrow. Inside it, the settlement document, a list of reconciled expenses, and a handwritten note. Olivia, all accounts closed, no balance owed, no balance left. Claire, no flourish, no sting, just full stop. Claire returned to her apartment and made tea. Her version of champagne. She didn't scroll news feeds, didn't search hashtags. The media storm had already shifted away from her. The silence now felt earned, not imposed. At dusk, Julia forwarded an email. The subject line read, International Women's Summit. Speaker invitation. Claire opened it. It wasn't a request. It was a declaration. Full keynote. Travel included. Topic open to her choosing. She considered replying immediately, but paused. She wanted to decide when the next word came from her. Later that night, she found herself in a drawer she hadn't opened in years. A small cedar box filled with handwritten drafts, early client notes, business card stubs from a version of herself that once felt she had to beg for presents. At the very bottom, she found Olivia's first press release. Typed by Claire, edited over email, sent from her then personal Gmail account. She smiled. Not bitterly, just, finally. There was nothing left to preserve. Closure hadn't arrived in a heated argument or an apology that echoed with regret. It had arrived in clauses and courier slips. It wasn't loud, but it was permanent. They buried me under credit lines and silence. I built roots. The sun came in clean and confident through the 10th floor windows. Claire stood in the doorway of her new office, key still warm in her palm. The lease had been signed an hour ago. Downtown Los Angeles hummed outside, but inside, quiet, airy, spacious. A place that didn't just look like hers. It felt like hers. "You want to do the honors?" Julia asked, holding a small glass jar filled with espresso beans. Her idea of a founding moment. Claire stepped in, pressed the jar against the windowsill, and smiled. "Let's start this one with clarity, not caffeine." Later that morning, she gathered the new team in the open concept conference room. 5 employees, 3 new hires, 1 returning coordinator, and a bright-eyed intern who nervously clutched a stylus as if it were a wand. Claire kept it short. "Welcome," she said, voice steady. "Our mission is not noise. It's precision. We don't apologize for impact." The intern blinked, then wrote that down verbatim. Julia handed her a box. A little something. Inside, a photo in a black frame. Claire, sitting at a long-forgotten panel years ago, her nameplate partially blocked by someone else's elbow. Beneath it now, a plaque engraved with the words, "Your seat, your nameplate, your rules." Claire stared at it longer than she meant to. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. By noon, her inbox was full. Not with apologies, but opportunities. A clean reputation carries weight, but a vindicated silence carries velocity. That evening, she took the podium at a private donor event in Santa Monica. Nothing fancy, just 30 chairs in a garden courtyard under fairy lights and conversation. "I've been asked a lot lately what power looks like," Claire said into the mic, no notes in hand. "It's not loud. It's not viral. And it's not permission. It's what endures when everything temporary burns out." Polite applause followed, but Claire didn't look for validation in faces anymore. She just scanned the night sky for gaps between the clouds. Julia joined her afterward, holding a flute of sparkling water. 2 more inquiries from media schools. One wants to license your case study." Claire tilted her head. "My what?" Julia smirked. "They're calling it the strategic silence model." Claire laughed, the kind that starts in the throat but lands low in the chest. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was space. Breathing room. Later that night, in the stillness of her new home, sleek, understated, far from the noise, Claire let herself stand still. No phone in hand, no calendar alerts, just the residual warmth of a day not wasted. Her phone buzzed once. Voicemail. The transcript preview read, "We'd like you to write a book. Title, The Quiet Exit." Claire didn't press play. She didn't need to hear it to believe it. She just sat down at her desk, her own this time, and opened a blank document. Not to begin, but to continue. If a story doesn't belong to you, you don't get to write the ending. Sunday morning arrived in soft light and silence. The windows were cracked just enough to let in the breeze and the faint sound of birds, the kind of ordinary peace that once felt like a luxury. Claire sat on the edge of her cream linen couch, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She tapped once. Photos. The last image in the family album appeared. Olivia's wedding. A wide shot. Claire's silhouette barely visible in the background, almost cropped out. She stared at it for a moment longer than she needed to. Then she pressed delete. A second later, the image was gone. No pop-up. No drama. Just space reclaimed. She stood and walked over to the kitchen counter where a white envelope waited. The contract had arrived on Friday. Clean, hardcover, embossed. A publishing house in New York had sent it overnight. Inside, 20 pages of terms, permissions, and the same line on every footer. The Quiet Exit by Claire Morgan. She signed with her usual pen. No flourish, no hesitation. There was no audience, no applause. But she smiled anyway. Her phone buzzed. Julia. Checking in, you good? Her voice hummed through the speaker. I'm better than good, Claire said. I'm unbothered. Julia laughed. Should I get that on a mug? Etch it in glass, Claire replied, walking to the fireplace. In her hand, she held the wedding invitation. Cream cardstock, gold-foiled names. That old line etched like a wound. All you have to do is smile and stay out of the frame. Claire held it over the flame, watched the edge curl inward like a closing eye. The words didn't scream. They vanished. By the time the card was gone, Claire felt no lighter, but no longer tethered. She returned to her desk and opened her journal. She wrote, "There is no revenge sweeter than not being who they expected." Then she added one more line. "And no ending more elegant than owning the pen." She closed the journal, binding the thought like a signature. The silence returned. Full, calm, final. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A text this time. Ms. Morgan, we have a private equity proposal for your next venture. Claire didn't rush to open it. She poured the rest of her coffee into her favorite mug and took it to the window. Outside, the city was doing what it always did. Moving forward, unaware, unapologetic. She sipped, content. The book would come. The next venture, too. But for now, peace was enough. And for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't a cage. It was hers. The silence that once buried her became the ground where resilience took root. What was stolen in applause was reclaimed in truth. And this time, everyone heard it. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet refusal to be erased, to rewrite the ending. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you found this story empowering, like, share, and subscribe. And comment below, 1 if you connected with Claire's journey, 2 if you'd have handled it differently.